Welcome back to another episode. And today I want to share something that I have never said this directly before. There was a season in my life where rest terrified me, not inconvenience me, not frustrate me, terrified me. And from the outside, it looked great. No one will have guessed it because I look so productive. I look consistent. I look like a woman who had it all together, who was building something real, who was showing up, who was disciplined. I had learned the language of self care. I have posted about it. I have recommended it to other women. I told my clients that they needed to slow down. And in the private, in the quiet moments, when there was nothing left to do and there was no one left to serve, and the to-do list, it was finished, I will feel something rise in my chest that I can only describe as dread. Its stillness felt like danger. Silence felt like failure. Rest felt like something I had not earned yet. And here's the sentence that it broke something open for me when I finally got to be honest about it. If you cannot rest, if rest produces anxiety instead of relief, you are not managing your time wrong. You are managing your worth wrong. That is what today's episode is about. Not time management, not productivity hacks, not the self-help version of self-care that it looks like bubble baths and candles. The real conversation. The one that it goes underneath the schedule, underneath the habits, underneath the relationships with hustle, and ask why the stopping feels unsafe. Let me start where everything starts in this work, at the beginning, at the formation, because the discomfort you feel when you stop moving did not arrive randomly. It was built carefully, consistently over the years of receiving a specific message, sometimes spoken, sometimes simply motto about what it means to be a person of value in the world. The message was this: your worth is a function of your output. You are valued when you are productive. You deserve good things when you have worked hard enough for them. Rest is a reward, something that it must be earned through sufficient effort before it can be safely accessed. Then, the moment you stop earning, the moment you post the output, you are in danger of becoming the thing that the message always implied you were when you were not actively producing. Not enough. This is not a personal failure. This is a culture inheritance. Generations of women before us, when your grandmother's rest was a luxury that poverty cannot afford, when your mother's stillness was interrupted by necessity before it could become a practice, when the women who shaped your earliest understanding of what strong women looks like were always moving, always producing, always available, always giving. You did not grow up believing that the rest is part of the work. You grew up believing that rest is what happens when the work is done, and the work is never done. So you carry it into your business, into the entrepreneurship, into the very vocation that it was supposed to give you freedom. And what was supposed to be freedom became the most sophisticated version of the same prison. Because now you are not just producing for a paycheck, you're producing for a dream. And how do you justify stopping when the dream is still becoming? The short answer is you do not. Not yet. Not until you understand what is actually happening in your body when you try. Because the discomfort of rest is not a character flaw. It's a physiological response that is perceived as a threat. And understanding that mechanism, understanding at the level of biology and not just the behavior, is what creates the possibility of genuine sustainable change. Here's what is happening in your nervous system when you stop. Your automatic nervous system has two primary modes: sympathetic activation, the mode of mobilization, of doing, of scanning for a threat and responding to it, and the parasympathetic activation, the mode of restoration, of repair, at the deep cellular level process that it can only happen when the system believes that it's safe. For a woman who has spent years, sometimes decades, in a state of chronic sympathetic activation, the parasympathetic state does not feel like rest. It feels like vulnerability, like exposure, like falling, because her nervous system has recalibrated its baseline. The state of constant movement has become the state that it feels normal, the state that it feels safe. And stillness, which it should be relief, has become the thing that it triggers the alarm. This is not a metaphor. This is measurable. The cortisol levels, the heart rate variability, the neurological patterns of chronic activated nervous system, they produce a body that has literally forgotten how to be still. They experience that resting is a kind of threat. And then we tell that woman to practice self-care. We tell her to slow down. We give her permission to rest. And she tries. Genuinely, she tries. And her body responds with anxiety, with guilt, with the relentless compulsion to find something useful to do. And she concludes that she is just not someone who is good at resting, that she is wired differently, that for some people like her, rest just not come naturally. What she has not been told is that the inability to rest is not a personality trait. It's a nervous system condition. And nervous system conditions, unlike personalities, can be healed. Drop the word still in the comments right now if what I just described lives in your body. Not because I need the engagement, because naming what is happening is the first act of healing. And I want to know that you are here. Now, I want to name the beliefs underneath the physiology, because the nervous system response is a mechanism, but the beliefs are the programming. And you cannot update the response without examining the code that is generating it. And I want to share these 5 beliefs. One of them, maybe more than one, is operating in you right now, not as a thought you're consciously hold. It's a truth that you have never thought to question. Belief number 1, rest has to be earned. This is one of the most pervasive one, and it is the one that it makes the most intuitive sense on the surface, which is exactly what makes it the most dangerous. The logic goes like this. I will rest when I have done enough, when the revenue goal is met, when the launch is finished, when the team is built, when the business is stable, when the clients are all served and the content is all created, and the vision is all realized. The problem, the specific structural problem with this logic is that the threshold keeps moving because enough is not a number, it's a feeling. And for a woman whose self-worth is organized around the output, the feeling of enough is not produced by achievement. It is produced by identity, by the internal sense of being fundamentally sufficient, not because of what you have done, but because of who you are. And no amount of external achievement can produce an internal sense of sufficiency. That is the mechanism that it works. If you are chasing the feeling of enough through accumulation of results, the results will always arrive with a new threshold attached because the inner economy has not changed, only the outer numbers have. The earning model of rest is a closed loop with no exit. The rest is always one accomplishment away, and the accomplishments always produce another accomplishment that it must be achieved before the rest can begin. The only way out of this loop is the recognition, real embodied, not just intellectually understood, that the rest is not a reward at the end of the journey. It is the fuel for the journey itself. That the woman who rests well builds better than the woman who never stops. Not because she is lazier, but because she's fuller. Belief number 2. Resting means falling behind. The second belief is the one that is the most aggressively reinforced by entrepreneurship culture. Someone else is posting right now. Someone else is closing clients while you're sleeping. Someone else is building the audience, creating the funnel, launching the offer, capturing the market share that you could be capturing, but you're laying down right now. You're not doing anything. This is the lie that hustle culture has made into a virtue. The glorification of the perpetual sprint, the worship of the person who sleeps 4 hours and grinds 12 and calls it success. And it is not just wrong. It is neurologically destructive. Sleep deprivation, chronic accumulated sleep debt produces measurable cognitive impairment equivalent to clinical intoxication. Your decision-making deteriorates. Your creativity collapses. Your emotional regulations goes offline. Your ability to read people, to feel into what your audience needs, to access the intuitive wisdom that is in your foundation of a great coaching and great content. All of it degrades. And here's the unbearable irony. The woman who cannot rest because she's afraid of falling behind is making every decision from cognitively compromised state. She's strategizing with a depleted brain. She's creating from an empty well. She's trying to serve from a place of profound insufficiency and then wonder why growth is not sustainable. The truth, the one the hustle narrative does not have the courage to tell you, is that your competitors who are resting are outperforming your competitors who are not. Not in spite of the rest, but because of it. Because a well-rested nervous system, a regulated, creative brain, a body that it has been given the time to repair and restore, that system produces work a different quality of work than the system that it never stops. You are not falling behind when you rest. You are gaining ground at the cellular level where the real work of preparation happens. Now, belief number 3. Stillness will surface what you have been avoiding. This is the belief that most people will not say it out loud. But I want to say it out loud because for many women in this community, it is the real reason rest feels uncomfortable. When you stop moving, when the noise dies down, the calendar goes quiet, and there's nothing left to attend, nothing left to do, something rises. Not peace, not a stillness that the wellness culture promises, something else. The old grief, unprocessed fear, the questions you have been keeping at bay through disciplined application of business, the emotions you have never had time to feel because you have always had something more urgent to attend or to do. In the busyness, the beautiful, productive, genuinely created busyness of building a business has served, among other things, as the most socially acceptance and avoidance strategy ever invented. Because you cannot be accused of avoiding your inner life when you are building something real. When you're serving real people and creating real content and generating real revenue, the avoidance is dressed in the language of purpose. And it's almost impossible to distinguish from the outside and sometimes from the inside, from genuine calling. But your body knows the difference. Your body knows whether the movement is coming from inspiring calling or from the need to outrun something that is waiting in stillness. Your body has been trying to tell you in the tight chest and the jaw that it will not unclench and the exhaustion that is sleep does not fix. That there is something in the quiet that is not dangerous, that is just need to be felt. Here's what I know from this work, that the things that you are avoiding in the stillness is almost never as devastating as the avoidance itself. The grief, when you finally stop long enough to feel it, it has edges. It's real, it is painful, and it is survivable. The avoidance has no edges, and it's the formless, unnamed way of everything unprocessed. Carry it everywhere indefinitely at the full metabolic cost of your body that is working to keep it below the surface. Rest does not create the pain. It reveals the pain that it was already there. In pain that is revealed, can it be healed? Pain that is hidden simply accumulates. And if you are at therealnextlevel.com, if you are ready to stop outthrowing what is the stillness and actually go there with someone who knows how to walk into with you. The application is open. This is the exact word, not the version with the softer name, the actual thing. Belief number 5, your value lives in your usefulness. The fourth belief is the one that it sits most directly underneath the pattern of women who carry too much, who over-deliver consistently. You cannot say no without guilt, who experience their own needs is inconvenient, and who cannot rest because resting is by definition a moment of not being useful to anyone. If your value, you felt embodied below conscious sense of your own worth is organized around your usefulness to other people, then the moment you stop being useful, you stop being valuable. And a woman who does not believe she is valuable will not rest. Because rest is not productivity. Rest does not serve anyone. Rest does not advance the mission. Rest is from the framework of earned worth. an act of selfishness. And selfishness, for a woman whose goodness has always been demonstrated through self-sacrifice, through reliable suppression of her own needs in service of everyone else, is not just uncomfortable, it is identity threatening. This is why you can know intellectually that you need to rest and still feel guilty when you try. Because the guilt is not irrational. It is perfectly logical response of self-concept that defines you by what you give. And rest in that framework is subtraction. It is choosing yourself in a season where self-concept says choosing yourself is not allowed. Dismantling this belief is not the work of a single episode. It's not the work of affirmation or boundary setting exercise or a week off of the calendar. It is the work of genuine identity renovation, of building the foundation from worthiness rather than usefulness, of deciding repeatedly against the grain of decades of condition that you are valuable when you are producing nothing. When you are simply being, when the only thing you're doing is existing in the full, unhurried, unapologetic reality of who you are. That is not a small decision, but it is the decision that everything sustainable is built upon. Belief number 5, God rewards grind. The fifth belief is the one that it lives in the spiritual architecture. And for women of faith, for women who are building businesses that are rooted in purpose, in calling, is the most powerful and the most quietly damaging. The belief that God rewards the grind. The faithfulness is demonstrated through relentless work. That the woman who stops, who steps back, who creates a space, who chooses rest in a season that it feels like it demands more, is somehow less committed, less obedient, less deserving of the breakthrough. And I want to speak directly into that, not to diminish your faith, but to give you back the full version of it. The same wisdom that it called us to do the work also commanded rest, not suggested, command. The principle of the Sabbath, the deliberated, sacred, non-negotiable ceasing of labor, is not a concession to human weakness. It is a design specification. It is the creator of your calling telling you that the rhythm of sustainable growth has rest built into that structural level. That is not a reward after the sprint. It's a requirement of the design. The farmer who refuses to let the field life follow, who insists on producing every season because the mission demands it, does not get more harvest. He gets soil depletion. He gets diminishing return. He gets eventually a field that it cannot produce what it once could because the rhythm of restoration was violated in favor of the rhythm of output. You are the field. In the follow season, the season of apparent unproductivity, of quiet, of restoration, is not the enemy of your harvest. It is the preparation for it. Rest is not a failure of faith. Rest is an act of faith. It is the declaration that you trust the one who gave you the calling to sustain it, that you do not have to grip so tightly, produce so relentlessly, sprint so continuously, because the vision is held by something larger than your output. That is not laziness dressed as theology. That is the most mature and most courageous version of faith available to a woman who builds. Now, I want to change this from the beliefs to the body, because one of the things I teach, one of my principles of the core of this work, is that the body is not the enemy of healing. It is the messenger. And the specific messages your body sends when you push past the threshold, when you violate the need for rest consistently enough, the need becomes a symptom deserve to be read with seriousness that they were sent with. Burnout recovery has become a trending conversation in the wellness entrepreneurship space. And I am grateful for that because it means more women are naming what is happening rather than quietly enduring it. But I want to offer a more specific frame than burnout as a general concept. Burnout is not a singular event that happens to you one dramatic day. It is a gradual, measurable process of depletion that it moves through recognizable stage. And your body signals each stage clearly if you have learned to listen. The first signal is being irritated, the specific quality of being short with people you love. Reacted in situations that will not ordinarily produce reactivity, easily overwhelmed by the ordinary demands of the ordinary day. This is your system telling you that the reserves are insufficient for the load that is carrying. This is not a character problem, it is a resource problem. The resource is rest. The second signal is creativity flatness. The ideas do not come the way that they used to. The content that it used to flow feels forced. You sit down to create, and what comes out is adequate but not alive. Not the work that made you feel like this was your calling, but the work of a woman who is producing because production is what is required. This is your brain, it's specifically your prefrontal cortex in your default mode network, the seeds of creativity in the inside, telling you that they have been in output mode for so long that the input has been cut off. Creativity requires stillness, not occasionally, it's structurally. You cannot generate indefinitely without periods of genuine receptivity. The third signal is an emotional numbness. The clients who used to move you stop landing as deeply. The wins that it should feel significant feel flat. The mission that lit something on fire inside of you has become, without your noticing, the gradual shift. Simply the thing you do. This is the deepest signal of all, the one that is the most alarming and the most misread. Many women at this stage conclude that they have lost their calling, that the passion is gone, that something is fundamentally wrong with them or their purpose. What is actually happening is that their nervous system has been in a state of chronic depletion for so long that it has begun to shut down the non-essential functions. And emotional responsiveness, being metabolically expensive, is one of the first things to go offline when the system is conserving sources. The passion is not gone. It is behind a door that has been locked by the body that is trying to survive. And the key to that door is not a new strategy. It's not a rebrand. It's not a business pivot or a new offer or a fresh start. It is rest. Real, protected, unapologetic rest. It's structural and built into a scheduled rest. This is where your nervous system regulation becomes the most important business skill that you can develop, not a wellness add on. It's the foundational practice that determines whether the creativity flows, whether the content lands, whether the leadership is grounded. A regulated nervous system is a productive nervous system. And a productive nervous system requires regular, intentional, non negotiable rest. If someone in your world is building on empty, if you know a woman who's producing brilliant and deteriorating quietly, share this episode with her today. Not as a hit, as a gift, because she needs this conversation that she might not know how to ask for it. Now, I want to make a distinction that I believe it will change how you think about this. Because most of the women who told me that they rest, who have tried to rest, who have scheduled rest, who has given themselves permission to rest, are actually not resting. They're performing rest, which is a completely different thing. Real rest is not the absence of work. It is the presence of restoration. And restoration, genuine restoration, neurological restoration, requires specific conditions that most of what we call taking a break does not create. Scrolling to your phone is not rest. Your brain is receiving an estimated 6 to 10,000 stimulants per hour in social media, and it is processing, comparing, evaluating, emotionally responding, often triggering the exact same anxiety and urgency the work creates. And so we go again into that loop, while your body gives you the appearance of a stillness. Watching television is not rest for a mind that is not genuinely at ease. Passive consumption that it requires nothing is still consumption. The nervous system does not restore through input, even pleasant input. It restores through reduction of input. Working out is not rest, though it's a recovery of a different kind. Movement is a stress response that produces beneficial adaptation through the recovery period after. But the workout itself is a demand of the system, not a restoration of it. What actually rest looks like the kind that it changed the neurological baseline that allows the cortisol to metabolize, that it gives the creativity brain time to process and integrate and generate the insights that only come when the conscious mind is stop dominating the process. Is far simpler and far more uncomfortable than most of us have learned to tolerate. It looks like a stillness without input, prayer without agenda, silence without the pressure to fill it, time in nature without a podcast in your ears, a sleep that is prioritized without guilt and protect without apology. It looks to the productivity conditioned mind like nothing. In nothing, the genuine, receptive, open experience of nothing is what most high achieving women are most afraid of. Because in the nothing, they have to be with themselves, not with their productivity, not with their output, not with the version of themselves that they have built to be impressive and capable and useful with themselves. They unperforming, unproducing, simply being self that it was there before the business and it will be there after. In learning to be with that self, to find her not as an absence of the productivity version, but it's the ground beneath her. It's both the deepest rest available and the deepest healing available. The productive version of you is real. She's capable and cold in genuinely building something important, but she's not all of you. And the part of you that she has been running over, the quiet, the softer, the most receptive part that it needs is stillness, the way the lungs need air. It has been sending you signals for a long time. Today is a good day to start listening. Not practically, because I'm not a teacher who believes in inspiration without architecture. Everything is spiritual in this work has a structure. Everything internal has an external practice. For practice, non-negotiable, not as additions to the schedule when the schedule allows, as the schedule itself. Practice number one, the protect morning. Before the business gets you, before the notifications, the emails, the client message, the content demands, there must be a period of time that it belongs to you completely and that the business is not permitted to enter. Not 10 minutes, not the time between snoozing and the moment you give in. A real defined, protected window of the morning that is organized entirely around restoration and receptivity. What happens in that window is yours to decide. Prayer, stillness, journaling that is not a strategic planning in disguise, movement that is gentle and attentive rather than punishing in productivity, reading something that it feeds your spirit rather than your strategy. The only rule is this: the business does not begin until the person is present. The email does not open until the human has been tended. The output does not start until the interior has been visited. This is not a luxury. This is foundational practice of a woman who builds sustainably. The morning determines the state. The state determines the quality of everything that it will follow. And the quality of everything that it will follow determines whether what you are building is real or is performance. Practice number two, the weekly Sabbath. 1 day per week, a real one, a full one, belongs to nothing productive. Not the business, not the content calendar, not the email that almost cannot wait. This will feel the first few times like a mistake, like falling behind, like the exact dangerous luxury that the hustle narrative have warned you about. Stay with it. Because what happens on the seventh day, when you have consistently protected, when your nervous system has learned that rest is a reliable feature of your rhythm rather than occasional exception, is remarkable. The creativity that it was flat on your most productive days begins to return. The ideas that forced effort cannot produce arrive easily in the stillness. The clarity the strategy cannot generate, it shows up in the quiet. The sense of purpose they felt embodied, genuine sense of being called and equipped and sustained, that has become abstract and distant through relentless output, it begins now to feel real again. Because you have been giving yourself back to the source of the calling, and the source restores what the output depletes. The Sabbath is not a religious obligation for those who hold it as faith. It is physiological wisdom for everyone who chooses. It is the built in maintenance schedule for the most important system in your business, you. Practice number 3, quarterly retreat alone, 4 times per year, once per quarter. You need an extended period of complete withdrawal from the demands of the business. Not a vacation with the family, not a mastermind retreat full of strategy and connection. A deliberated, solitary, structured withdrawal into deep rest and discernment. 2 days minimum, more if your season allows, in an environment that is genuinely different from your working environment because your nervous system has conditioned associations with the space where you work. And those associations produce the action of those spaces even in their absence. Different space create different state. In that space, no agenda, no delivering, no content consumption. The question you bring into the silence is not what I do next, but who am I becoming? And is the direction that I'm moving aligned with who am I called to be? The answers to those questions are available. They have been available. They are always available. But they require a quality of stillness. The ordinary week, even the best, the most protected, most disciplined ordinary week cannot create. The quarterly retreat is not a luxury. It is calibration appointment for the compass that everything else navigates by. Practice number 4, the permission statement. The 4 practice is the simplest, the most internal, and for some of you, the most radical. Every day, not once at the beginning and then never again, but every day, you say this to yourself in whatever form it feels true in yours. I am allowed to rest. My worth is not contagion to my output. I build better from fullness, not from depletion. Resting today is not losing ground. It is a laying foundation. Not as an affirmation you perform, it's a statement of identity that you have built into the architecture of who you believe yourself to be. Because the external practice of rest, the protected mornings, and the Sabbath days, and the quarterly retreats will not hold the internal permission that it makes them feel legitimate rather than stolen. The permission is the practice, and the practice is the renovation. Apply for a conversation of therealnextlevel.com if this is the work that you are ready to do. Not alone, not in the noise, but with direction and with someone who has already walked this path and knows the specific place where it gets hard. The application is simple, the conversation is real, and you are closer to ready than you think. I want to leave you with something that I believe with my whole self. The version of you that cannot rest, who moves compulsively, who produces anxiously, who experiences stillness as a threat rather than a gift, she's not the truest version of you. She's the version that it was built by survival, by necessity, by the deeply ingrained belief that stopping was dangerous and worth had to be earned. And the mission was too important for the person who's carrying it to have needs for her own. She is real. She's strong. She has built remarkable things, but she is not sustainable. In somewhere in your body, in the exhaustion that it follows you into the mornings, in the creativity that it comes harder than it used to, in the quiet moments when the performance pauses and something underneath tries to speak, you know that. The truest version of you, the one who was created for this calling before the fear got into the formation, before the womb began to masquerade as identity. She knows how to rest. She knows how to receive. She knows that the most powerful thing she can bring to this woman she's called to serve is not her capacity to outwork everyone around her. It is her fullness, her regulation, her genuine rest aligned, unperformed presence. And that version of you does not have to build from scratch. She simply has to uncover. She is underneath depletion. She's waiting on the other side of the permission. And the permission starts here with a decision, imperfect, uncertain, that you are allowed to stop, not because you have done enough, but because you are ready enough. Before we close, 3 things. If this episode produced a change, if something moved from your head into your body, like this video right now, not for the algorithm, because this content deserves to find every woman who's building and burning at the same time. And your one tap is how it gets to her. Leave a comment below with the words, I give myself permission to rest. Not as a performance, as the declaration of a woman who is genuinely finally choosing herself alongside the mission. I will see your comment, I will respond. This community is real and the conversation does not end when the video does. And if you are at the place and if you have been carrying this along long enough and you are ready for a real conversation with someone who understands exactly what is in the way, go to therealnextlevel.com, apply, tell me where you are, tell me what the rest of this episode brought up. I read every application. This is a real conversation, not an automated sequencing, and you deserve that. Subscribe if you are not already, because next week we go deeper. And this community is where the real work lives. Rest well, build sustainably, and I will see you on the next episode.